Hi, this is Sara with Croatians Online. Once again, coming to you with a really special guest from Montreal, Canada. Kat Coric joins us today in Montreal, but originally from Dubrovnik, Croatia. And there's a really cool story that Kat brings us today, that we've also been reading a little bit in the news, that connects her back to her homeland and hometown of Dubrovnik. So I'm just going to introduce Kat, and we'll talk about all of her story and everything here today. Kat, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We are really happy to have you. So my first question for you is just for you to tell us a little bit about yourself, your connection to Croatia. The Croatians Online media is all about what our diaspora is doing, how and where are they, what, how they stay connected to Croatia. So if you could just give us a little bit about your history.
Sure. Well, I was born in Dubrovnik and I moved to Montreal when I was 3 years old. My dad had a job offer in Montreal, so he took it. He was a master mariner, a captain. And I've lived in Montreal my entire life. And I've only traveled to Croatia about two weeks per year since all of these years because I was only able to go during my vacation time in the summer. And thanks to my parents, I really kept the culture alive. We had to speak Croatian at home, of course. And my parents taught me all about the history of Dubrovnik. And thankfully, I stayed in touch with all of my relatives that are back home. So I feel a very great sense of belonging to my homeland. Even though I've lived in Canada my entire life, I still feel very much, firstly, a Croatian and secondly, a Canadian.
Yep. And I love that. I think that part right there is where so many of our listeners are resonating with so many of the stories that we've been sharing. And your story, I think, will connect to a lot of what they're feeling, I may have left Croatia at a young age, or I may be born somewhere else in the world, but that connection to Croatia, because my family is from there, things like
Mhm.
that is still so strong and present within us. So that's wonderful. And to know that that culture was always kept alive in your home growing up is beautiful for sure. So you're an artist, which is really what we're talking more in depth about today. So my first question to you is, why art? How did you get started as an artist?
Well, I've always been good at art. I'm the type of artist that can pretty much draw anything from memory. And ever since I could hold a pen or a pencil in my hand, I was able to draw, paint, do whatever. So over the years, I just took a long time actually because I studied art history and archaeology. I did a Bachelor of Fine Art at Concordia University, but I had studied art in college and at high school. And I just started, like every artist starts little by little. Um, you know, I wanted to mention how, difficult it was to actually start because when you first start, the hardest thing is to start. And the only person that really believes in you is yourself because you kind of feel that you're good at something and you're good at it. But it's very difficult to pierce into the system because you don't have experience, nobody knows you, you don't have a resume, you haven't done anything, nobody wrote about you yet. You're
Mhm.
basically starting like carte blanche. You have to really start from the bottom. And as far as I can remember, that was the hardest time was really starting. But little by little over the years, you start with your first show and you start showing your work and you start getting clients and people can start to get to know you, and then it becomes easier and easier as you keep going, like in any career, I would say. But with the arts, it's a little bit more difficult because if you remember in school, most people didn't have art class except for maybe once a week, and we weren't really accustomed to art, and so it's a discipline that's difficult because it's something very personal that you create, and it comes from your subconscious, and then you put it out there into the universe, and then
Mhm.
you have to deal with the reaction of the people, and like most artists, I really create with the reaction of the viewer in mind. So yeah, that's been
Yeah.
my journey.
I think a real true depiction, which I'm glad that you shared because it is a journey. Many people that I've interviewed who are in some level of fine arts or the performing arts, it's this never give up attitude. I love this. I'm just going to kind of keep at this, but I know, it's going to be a building. It's a building process. It's not always
Exactly.
an easy one
Yes.
to do, but certainly one that comes with a lot of love and care for sure. So I guess with some of that, what's some of the most challenging parts of the artistic journey for you? And then also, what are some of the great parts of it? We don't want to talk all about just the negatives. So if you could kind of talk about both for us.
Sure. Well, some of the most challenging, as I mentioned, was really the beginning, how to start and how to get known and how to do something. And, it's super challenging as well, like the whole nature of the selling game, you have to sell and you have to make money from this art if you want to have it as a career. How do you find other venues to use your creativity where your art comes in handy in order to make a living? And there's many ways to do that. You can do artistic projects, you can curate, you can produce, you can do events, and your creativity comes in. you know I would say the hardest is really to sell, because not everybody is accustomed to buying, and to appear that you're successful, even though sometimes it can be really hard, because nobody will buy from you out of pity. They'll buy from you because you're successful and because it's going well. And most importantly, when they fall in love with the work that you do. So all of the pieces that I've sold in my career were always sold to people who really understood and connected with the work. And this is really what I look for when I'm creating, and when I'm just being an artist and just being free, doing what I love to do most, and doing commissioned work. The paintings that I do as commissions take approximately 1 year to complete, so they take a very long
Wow.
time. And I really love it the most when somebody falls in love with my style and really wants something that I do, and they give me carte blanche to do what I
Mhm.
can do, which can also be difficult because you're always asking yourself, like, is it good enough? Will they like it? Should I work more at it? When is the time to stop? But the connection to the work is really what I look for. And the most fun is really seeing the work of art once it's ready, once it's been delivered, once the client is so happy that they have it in their home and they photographed it and they showed it to you, and they've specifically they put a lighting system on it, to make it look great. Like,
Wow.
there's nothing better than that. And also just comments, thanks to Facebook and the internet and all the different social media that's out there. It's really amazing to get feedback. All artists live for feedback. Even though some of us might tell you that no, feedback doesn't matter to us, we actually thrive on the feedback. We need that connection. We need that reaction from our viewership in order for us to it almost gives us like a psychological stamp of approval, that what we're doing is good.
Mhm.
And you're open also to negative commentary, and that's okay. You just take it as it comes. It's not going to please everyone, it's
Right.
subjective.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that that's great, that idea of when someone falls in love with it, which validates just that you're in this and that you're doing work that's meaningful to people, which is really lovely. And we're
So
gonna
true.
yes, and we're gonna get to a lot of the meaning of your work to the Croatian people
Yes.
in just a bit. So before we get into that though, what do you think being an artist for you means?
Well, like Madonna said, artists are here to disturb the peace.
I love that.
And I feel like, yeah, as artists, we're more sensitive. We're generally more sensitive than the average person for some reason. This is part of our gift. We feel the pain of the universe. We feel the pain of the world. We're more open to seeing the troubles that are around us in our community, whether it's homelessness or addiction or wars, all these things that are like the bad parts of life. And so what happens is we sort of like, absorb all these things, and our medicine, if you will, and our way of coping, our coping mechanism is actually to create. So, when we create a work of art, it's almost like giving birth. It's a painful process, but we kind of eliminate our personal pain by putting it all into this artwork and sharing it with everybody. So this is kind of the way we operate.
I love that. I love that. I
Yeah.
know for me, and I'm not an artist, but when I do see art, I think it evokes emotion in me, all different
Yes,
kinds of emotion. And I think that
I
that
agree.
is what art is meant to do. And that's where that is it's such a beautiful thing. It's so needed, I think, in our
Yeah.
world to have
I mean,
art.
don't get me wrong, sometimes we do create just to make beautiful images and beautiful
Hmm.
paintings, and they're about beauty. And other times we create to provoke
Yes.
because we really want to show people what we're thinking of. And we want to
Yes.
remind them that perhaps they could think about it too, whether it's a subject that is difficult, to come by. Well, this is why we're here as
Yeah.
artists.
Hmm. And I definitely think that's a great segue into talking about your piece that ended up and was donated to the Dubrovnik Homeland War Museum. It's what I'm calling the big one. It's the one that certainly we've been reading about recently and seeing in our news feeds and things. I know that's how I found you too. So if you could tell us about the particular process for that piece and the journey through the years, because that particular piece that ended up in the Dubrovnik Homeland Museum, War Museum, it had a journey. It definitely
Yeah,
had a journey to finding its home there. So if you could talk a little bit about that piece.
sure. Well, I was actually in Dubrovnik in 1991, and was supposed to be there to do an archaeological excavation, a Paleolithic excavation with students from the Zagreb University. I had been studying archaeology and art history at Concordia in Montreal, and my great uncle, Filip Potrebica, who was a professor of history at the Zagreb University, arranged for me to be able to go and travel to Croatia and participate in this archaeological dig. So I was really excited. And I was in Dubrovnik waiting to get my instructions to arrive on the site. And as we know, what happened in 1991, first Slovenia was invaded, and after Croatia, my father, the late Captain Ivan Coric, basically ordered me to go back home. Everything was canceled, and every day people were leaving Dubrovnik. Like you could see the tourists panic and leaving in hordes.
Wow.
Mind you, though, nothing had happened with 6 months ahead. In 6 months, Dubrovnik was pretty much under siege. But at the time, I had to come back to Montreal. And then, as you know, in 91, this was pre-Facebook and the internet was just starting. It's hard to imagine, but it just was. So we were getting the news, from the newspaper and from, the phones, if they were working, if they were not working. And at that time, it was the most difficult period at first in order just to get Croatia recognized. Because if you remember, many, many countries around the world, first of all, didn't even recognize Croatia at first, Croatia's independence, from the former Yugoslavia. And so there was a huge lobby in Canada with all the Croatians, and my father was a big player in that, to lobby all the countries, all the embassies, everyone to recognize Croatia at first. And then little by little, every day we would see the horrors of that war and that unprovoked invasion, and we were just completely, absolutely, completely devastated because when you look at a beautiful city like Dubrovnik, it's belonging to UNESCO. It's a World
Mhm.
Historic Monument, which means it doesn't only belong to us as Croatians or to me as a citizen of Dubrovnik, but it belongs to the entire world. It's a piece of beauty. For us to see that city being bombed, from the land, from the sea, from the air, to see refugees leaving the town, women and children, to see the older people leaving. I mean, it was absolutely, completely devastating. Oh, excuse me. So what I did was, at that time, I didn't know anything else than to paint, because it was so horrible. I remember that in December, particularly, I just started painting because I felt like, there's nothing else I can do. I need to pour my grief, my sorrow, my
Mhm.
incredible emotions that I was feeling of sadness, of anger into my work. And so that's what I did.
Wow.
And I created a series of paintings, excuse me, about the war. And this is where that one painting, Moja Domovina, was was
Mhm.
was from, you know. And then
Beautiful.
this series actually traveled, excuse me, I have a bit of a cold.
Okay, that's okay. Hmm.
It traveled to Požega, to Zagreb, and to Dubrovnik in
Wow.
1996.
Wow.
Oh, sorry.
I mean,
Sure.
And I want listeners to know that when they they'll be able to click and see the one that ended up in the Dubrovnik Museum as well, so that they'll be able to see what some of the work looks like and where it led. And it's powerful. I mean, you can feel it just by looking at it, the
Oh,
emotions that
excuse me.
you must have had. That's okay. The emotions that you must have had when painting, because
I did.
there is so much to that. It's so powerful when
Well,
looking at it.
I felt an incredible sense of guilt
Hmm.
for being in Montreal while the war was
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
So the painting really explains, I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. But I'm actually glad you're talking about that emotion, because I think
Right.
that emotion is what so many people say, the ones that, were here maybe in the US or in Canada or in Australia throughout the war, that feeling of guilt, or feeling of like, what can I do? I feel
What can I
hopeless.
do?
Yes,
I
yes.
felt guilty.
Yes.
I felt guilty that I wasn't there.
Hmm.
I felt like I need to be there. I need to be a volunteer soldier, but my dad forbid it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, so this was wonderful. And then what are you comfortable with sharing how the painting that is now in the museum originally didn't go straight to Dubrovnik. It stayed maybe, at home a little bit, not in your home, maybe with,
It did.
yes. So if you
It
could talk
did. Well,
about a little bit of that
in
part.
1996, I organized, thanks to my dad once again, and thanks to Professor Potrebica, we organized a three-city tour in Croatia.
Wow.
Because after the war, I told my dad, I'm like, I need to do something with these paintings.
Yeah,
I want to
yeah.
show people in Croatia this work. And before you knew it, my dad organized everything with his
Wow.
cousin, with Philip, and he just came to me one day and said, "Okay, we have a show." And so we had a three-city tour in
Amazing.
Croatia. It went to Požega, to Zagreb, and then to Dubrovnik, and we had an exhibition in Dubrovnik. Then the whole series came back to Montreal, and I gave that painting to my dad as a gift. I had it
Wow.
framed, and then I gave it to him, and then it stayed in his house for the longest time. After his death 10 years ago, it came back to me from his estate. And then I had it, and then I was looking at it, the last 10 years and thinking like, okay, I need to do something with this one. I
Hmm.
can't sell it. It would
Hmm.
be the wrong thing to do. It wasn't intended to make any profit from this painting. So I thought I'd love to donate it back to my city. So I contacted the Ministry of Culture. I spoke with them. I initially wanted to donate it to the city of Dubrovnik. I was thinking maybe it can go at City Hall or somewhere,
Yeah.
And they immediately thought it was a great idea, but they introduced me to the Homeland War Museum, to their curator and executive
Mm.
director. We had a meeting within a day. We had a Zoom call, and they were very, very happy to,
Wow.
to take it as a donation. So that's what I did, organize a donation ceremony, which happened in July this
That's
year.
great. That's great. Yeah. And I love knowing that it's now there for
Yes.
all to see. And so and just the journey of it, I think, is so important for so many. I know I myself, as someone who lives outside in the diaspora, knowing that it was in a home full of love, family for so many years, where it came from, and now kind of where it ended up, and now it's found its sort of permanent home, hopefully
Yeah.
there,
My dad
you
had it
know.
in the living room. It was in the living room.
Wow,
Everybody saw
wow.
it.
That's such
Anybody
a
who
lovely
visited.
story.
Yeah.
And I think that's that part about Croatians that I love, is that there's always somehow family gets roped into all of our discussions. And I think that
Always.
is where the heart is in so much of it. And I think that's why when you
Absolutely.
look at that piece, and then knowing that it lived in your father's home for so long, there's just so much more emotion that I think comes up.
Yeah.
Because I can imagine for him it was emotional
My dad
to
loved
look
that
at it.
painting.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And don't forget too, in 91, the Croatian crest made a comeback, because
Hmm.
the crest was always there since Croatia was a kingdom, and then it was kind of wiped off the map when Croatia was assimilated into twice into Yugoslavia. They removed the crest. So for us as Croatians, that crest is everything. The Šahovnica, this is our
Yes.
identity. And you can't erase that, and you can't remove that. You could remove it physically from a flag for a period of time like it was, but you'll never remove it from our consciousness
Mm.
and from our DNA and from our history, So that's why I included that crest smack dab in the middle of the
Beautiful.
painting,
Yes,
because
yes.
it was important to have the crest there, and just to have the expression, the figures in the painting that are screaming and that are like upset, and there's death and it's very dark. This was my actual expression of how I felt.
Hmm.
So I'm that figure, but you're that figure,
Yes.
and every single Croatian in the diaspora is this figure.
Yes.
We're all
Yes.
feeling this pain, of what happened to us. So I was trying to portray that in the painting.
That's great. No, and I think that it did that because I know even
Thank
just
you.
in looking at it online and everything, I felt a lot when looking at it. I felt
Um,
sad, angry. I felt connected to my lineage in Croatia. All of it
yeah.
is it exists there. So that's beautiful. And I think that it's wonderful what you've done
Thank you.
for not only your hometown of Dubrovnik, but I think for all Croatian people.
Thank
And to
you.
know that it came from someone in the diaspora, I think is beautiful. That it shows how much we're still connected to
Absolutely.
our homelands
And
there.
will always be.
Always, always, we
Yeah.
really will. Wonderful. And so, this is a painting that now lives there. So, if in Dubrovnik, anyone can go and see it, correct?
Yes, well, right now it's actually in storage.
Okay,
Storage at the museum storage under temperature control and everything,
okay,
because for now the museum will be undergoing a renovation
okay.
years to come. For now, it's not exactly the proper atmosphere for an oil
Hmm.
painting to be
Hmm.
hung in the museum right now. But as soon as the museum's renovations are completed and everything's ready, it's going to be put
Oh,
back
wow.
position, and then we'll have an excuse to stage another
I
unveiling
was just gonna say, I
for
hope
the
there's
European
another
people. Yeah,
celebration.
definitely,
Yes, yes.
definitely. It'll be an excuse to
Wonderful.
do so.
Yes, yes, that sounds lovely. I love that. And I hope to be able to get down there, and hopefully listeners will be able to get down there when it is unveiled yet again in the museum.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So my last and final question of all my guests always is what you love most about your Croatian culture. I think I'm finding that it's really valuable for us to hear what everyone feels, and there's common ground. I think that many answers are coming to. So, what is your favorite part about Croatian
Well,
culture?
I love my country so much, and I love my city, my hometown, Dubrovnik. But I love every city in Croatia, and I love my people. And since I'm so far away, and since I've lived here my entire life, and only been there, like I mentioned, a couple times a year, a couple weeks a year, every year, there's this incredible sense of connection and love to my people and to my country. So not just to Dubrovnik because it's so beautiful to look at, but to the actual people. And, from the history, the culture, the food, everything, and then when I meet Croatians around the world, we right away become friends,
Mhm.
because we all feel a closeness
Yes.
immediately. You could be somewhere and you hear someone speaking Croatian and you
Oh, yes.
immediately,
Hmm.
and there could be a Croatian, Mr. and Mrs. X, who are visiting your town, and you find out, you immediately invite them over, and you have
Hmm.
food and talk, and you get to know them. It's almost like in the diaspora, us Croatians were one, and we enjoy meeting each other. We're such
Yes.
great hosts. We're natural hosts, because of the history of tourism and, so many people coming to see our beautiful country.
Hmm.
We love that, So for us, it's this connection that we feel to our people. And, in Montreal, thanks to my mom especially, we cooked all the food that was traditional Croatian
Hmm.
food. And, I personally make my own višnja, which is
Very
like the
nice.
sour cherry liqueur.
Yes.
Oh, my father, when he was alive, he was smoking his own pršut. He was
Hmm.
making his own wine. It was called Bela Croatia. It had its own specifically designed label with the Croatian
Wow.
crest on it, of course. And he would
Wow.
gift that wine to a lot of his friends and clients, And part of our job as Croatians around the world is also to share that beauty and that culture and that
Hmm.
food. And we all act as sort of volunteer ambassadors to Croatia when we're out in the diaspora. For the last 10 years, I've been bringing guests with me, people who just fell in love with Croatia thanks to seeing my posts on Facebook, let's say, and they see the photos and they're like, oh my God, I want to go. So I'm like, okay, come along. So the last 10 years, I've been bringing friends with me, and
Lovely.
slowly, I see myself as this little tourism ambassador, like slowly but
Hmm.
surely building my own little private tourism thing, and bringing people over and inviting them to come see and taking them all around and playing tour tour guide and hiring the professional tour guides to give them the real tour,
Yes.
to show them the beauty about Croatia. But with the recipes, we really keep our ancestors alive, like any recipe you make keeps the ancestor alive. Whoever taught that recipe to you, was it your great grandmother that taught it to your grandmother, and your grandmother taught it to your mom, and so on. We cook all the same recipes. My mom has the original recipe book that's written by
Mm-hmm.
hand,
Mm-hmm.
with all of the recipes. And we have all the recipe books from Dubrovnik. There's some amazing books that you can purchase that have the
Great.
original recipes that have been there for 1,000 years. So we tend to keep our traditions like this with the cooking, with the food, and plus the
Yes.
history. I
Yes.
tend to read the history as much as I can. I'm always reading something about Dubrovnik just to really get to know everything about my city. So I'm currently reading about the history of the construction of the walls.
Oh, wow.
And I'm in the 14th century right now, just reading about how
Wow.
it did. And every bit of history for me about my city fascinates me.
Yeah, and the history is a very long one, which and a beautiful one
Yes.
to look back and read through. And I think so important. I think that's such a great point to really
So my question to you
do
is,
that. Yes.
when are we having Purshut at my
Oh
place in
my gosh,
Dubrovnik
I will bring
together?
some pashki seed. My father was from the island of
Bring some
Pag.
pashki
I'm
seed,
gonna bring some
please.
pashki seed and I will head on up there. I
Yes.
will. I will.
I've actually sent gifts of pashki seed to people in the States.
Yes.
I have some great friends in New York and in New Jersey, and I found a way to send them pashki
Oh
seed, and I do
yeah,
so, and they just love it,
it
and
is. It's
we
such a
can't have it in
specialty.
Canada, unfortunately,
Oh.
so I have to wait every time to go back to Croatia and have it because it's just so
hmm
good.
hmm
Pashki
Well,
is
then I
so
might have to host you on the island of
oh,
Pag one day, and then you
yes.
can come on up, and I will get you
I
some
guess I must
of the
visit.
pashkisiad for sure, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yes, and I may just have to head down to Dubrovnik as well to
Please.
visit you and this
Must.
beautiful painting as well, for
You
sure.
must.
But it really was lovely to speak to you. It's such a pleasure to be
Um,
meeting people like you
Thank
out
you
in the
so
diaspora.
much.
So I'm really happy to be doing this work and to be meeting people like this out there doing all these amazing things and to be able to get these stories out there. So thank you for
Um,
sharing your
Thank you
story
for
with
so
us
much for working with
today.
Croatians Online and helping connect all these Croatians around the world. It's a wonderful job that you're doing,
It is
and
great.
I'd be pleased to continue working with you and to
Oh, of
refer other
course.
Croatians.
Of course, of course. Yes,
Absolutely.
we'd be happy
Yes.
to. Yes, we'll definitely keep it connected and you'll keep us abreast of
Thank
everything that's
you.
going on in your life and we'll be
Thank
happy to
you.
share anything via our platforms as well
Thank
anytime.
you so much. And thank you
Thank
for the
you.
chance to have this interview with you.
Of
I really
course.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.